Hey, morning everyone. John here. Had a fantastic first whatifi for VFX webinar yesterday. Thanks to everyone who showed up there. I think we had maybe 25 or 26 people there, which was great. Being as excited as I was though, and a bit of a webinar rookie, I forgot to press record on that. And I was really looking forward to recording that session and sharing that with everyone here. So for those who weren't able to make it, or those who didn't know about the webinar, I'm going to do a quick recap, a lightning sort of thing here, try and do it in 10 minutes or less. So we'll sort of see. So for anyone who doesn't know, whatifi is this highly visual, low-code way of building financial models. And I ran through some of the basics, which I'll sort of skip here, and focused on two example scenarios. One is our writer's strike example here, which I'll kind of go through. But the big thing was showing our capacity module and some of the work that we're doing right now. We gave a sneak peek at that. The capacity module allows management, producers, production managers to visually build out scenarios to see what staff you actually have in which departments and the work that you're bidding and the resources are required, and understanding the delta between those two things. So as all these different scenarios play out, in this scenario, are you overstaffed or understaffed? Are you hiring compositors? Are you freelancing and bringing in some contractors for animators for 2 weeks or 2 months or 2 years? All of that is really, really easy to do. The main thing being able to see multiple scenarios all at the same time. So we'll jump into that one, but first I'm going to show you the basics here. Anyone who's seen my social media may have noticed that I had a whatifi for VFX writer strike type example here, and this is a recap of that, but we'll put some extra details into this one. So very quickly, you're able to connect together these pre-built business logic events, no different than something you might do in Nuke or Houdini. The only difference is that instead of calculating pixels, I'm calculating numbers on things. So every good financial model tells a story, and this model is telling the story of a fictional company called VFX R US. They are bidding on Stranger Things Season 5 and the next season of House of Dragon. They have employees, costs, fixed expenses, all of this, and they're trying to figure out what their payroll and cash flow looks like in a couple of different scenarios. What if Stranger Things with the writer strike pushes out by 4 months or 6 months? What if House of the Dragon pushes out by 3 months? What if the House of Dragon award is the full award or half the award? So you can imagine right there, that's already a lot of scenarios. And let's actually recap that one. It's actually 12 different scenarios that get generated with just those simple questions alone. So let's quickly step through this model here. We're going to start with our initial balance event. This company has $600,000 sitting in the bank effective today here. They have fixed costs right now, say $60,000 a one-time cost and $35,000 monthly for their operating expenses. We can look at payroll here right now, and their payroll, I'm turning things on and off here, their payroll is $145,000 a month for artists and $80,000 a month for management. Projects and bidding, this is our contract event, and this is where some of the magic happens. So this could be overall for the project. This could be multiple episodes inside of the project here. So on a high level, we're looking at Stranger Things Season 5. Maybe 1.23 million is the total potential award for the project. We have milestones in here for when you're going to get paid and the payment terms for each of these companies here. On that one, start dates and end dates. So we're able to map out projects like Stranger Things, and then we're also able to map out something like House of the Dragon, which is a larger award with a different schedule and different payment terms. So one of the biggest challenges running a visual effects studio is not necessarily exclusively getting the work, which is obviously a big deal, but when the money is coming in and as we're paying our teams for the work that they're doing. So a contract event models more the lumpy revenue flows that we get in traditional visual effects. So now let's kind of play with this one. In a perfect example, and what I'm doing is I'm locking some events in here right now, and the scenario is going to update. So let's do this interactively, which is one of the big keys for the technology, is the ability to do these things interactively. We have one single scenario now. So I look at my scenarios, there's just one scenario, and this is what the profile looks like for this company if all of the work awards as expected. Everything is perfectly fine, and then eventually, way out in March of 2025, we've got to worry about future work there. Everything is fantastic. But let's now start to kind of play with some of the challenges. What if the next season of Stranger Things, because of the writer strike, pushes out by 4 months or 6 months based on those initial dates? And what we're using is this really powerful event called a modifier. Normally in a spreadsheet, you'd have to go to a date, you'd have to change it back, duplicate tabs, do all these sort of things. Instead, a modifier is like a filter where you can temporarily and also temporally override some value upstream there to see what it looks like in that scenario. So for example, in this modifier, I can say, what if we point to that contract event and the projects that are in bidding, specifically Stranger Things Season 5, and specifically its start date. And let's change that start date out by 4 months to now be December of 2023. Okay. So I can now toggle all of these on here at the same time. So I have the 4-month scenario, the 6-month scenario, and the default scenario. And now you notice I have 3 scenarios here. The revenue is still all the same, but when the money comes in is different now, right? So I can see that. Very quickly here, let's sort of step through the rest. What if House of the Dragon also pushes out? So now I'm going to toggle that on, so I now have that scenario as well. You'll see I now have 6 scenario threads, and now we start to get crunchy. We start to see some scenarios where this company is actually going to be cash flow negative at this particular stage. And let's take it one step further. What if House of the Dragon, the award isn't the full award? What if it's 50% of the award? Same sort of thing here. Boom, I'm going to turn that on, and now suddenly we're going to have 12 different scenarios here, and you can see there are definitely a number of scenarios where this company is in trouble. So it's part of this decision making. What we did on the call is we dynamically on the fly added in some modifiers. I put a modifier here that said, what if we take our current management fees, which are $80,000, and reduce it by 20%? So that's one of these sort of so whats that we did. Okay, and we also dynamically on the call added in a modifier that sadly has us parting ways with Bill. Now, Bill is one of our employees here. We can take a look at Bill. And Bill is one of our staff employees, started in July and had no particular end date. We can now go in and put in a modifier here that says, well, what if in one of our scenarios we actually look at Bill and change his end date now to be the end of the year. So those are some of the quick on-the-fly things that we did in the webinar there, building out the scenarios, seeing what the values look like, and testing different actions afterwards, getting up to 24 scenarios here to be able to figure out how we want to manage that. As a quick recap, while we have all the graphs in the world, we also have good old-fashioned spreadsheet type views here. This can all be exported out as a CSV file for people to do calculations on afterwards. So we covered that, and then we jumped over to our capacity module. So as a recap, our capacity module is a way of being able to not only put in projects like House of Dragons, but also the resources required to pull that off. So we have our project, we have our upcoming resource event here where we're able to put in how many compositors we need, how many animators we need, when we need them to be able to start, things like this. And what that allows us to do is to bundle all those events together to create a project wrapper on that one. And that project can be collapsed down. We can have multiple projects in our scenario here with different start dates, end dates, and capacity or requirements on those ones. We can then do the same thing where we say, well, what if a project pushes out by 3 months? Or what if it delays by 6 months? What if the award is 50% of that one? And then we can run capacity calculations, which take a look at all of the staff that you have, all the staff that you need, all the different scenarios for that one, and then calculates the discrepancy between those two values. And that gives you the ability to decide whether you have to hire more compositors, or where you actually have to look at some furloughs or potentially at some layoffs to keep cash flow running. So with that, we jumped over and showed some of our work in progress here. So we now have our employee event, for example. In an employee event, I've got, case in point, I've got John, who is staff, senior compositor, rates, start dates, no end dates. I can have placeholder employees. So I've got animators, junior animators that are going to be in our Vancouver office, and we have 10 of them, and this is sort of the average rate that's going on. Or third, we can have a contractor like Carl, who's in our Atlanta office here. He's an intermediate compositor in his rates, and he has a fixed start date and end date. So with that, I'm able to very easily take a look and see how many employees I have. I can look at my employees on a top level and see how many employees I have. I can also drill down inside of my employees and look for specific types. So maybe I'm looking at compositors and animators, and at the same time I'm able to see how many compositors I have and how many animators I have over the duration of this scenario. We can add in a project like Orphan Black here the next season and put in some revenue for that. And then we can also pull from our bid the resources we're going to require. So for example, right now, I say that I'm going to need, over a 6-month duration, 10 compositors on average monthly. So that's one way that we can input information. And I can turn this on. I can also use day counts instead. So maybe for my CG artists, I know that I'm going to need animators over a 10-month duration, but I have 850 days required for that. So now I can use our software to amortize that across the duration of the scenario. We can also pick different distributions. So this is going to evenly distribute those animators over that duration. We'll be able to pick front-loaded, back-loaded, a bell curve, so that maybe you need all of your animators at the beginning of your production and you're going to weight that more heavily, and then you keep a smaller team as things play out. Or maybe it's like traditional compositing, where your compositors start slowly and then you really ramp up to the end of your production to have more at the end. So here now I'm able to turn on CG artists here as well. And this gives me my needed. So I'm able to see my employees actual and my employees needed, and being able to tell what the difference is between those two. And then once we add our capacity event, you'll be able to see those discrepancies there. So that's what we showed in our webinar yesterday, and by the end of this month we intend to build up the rest of the events here to be able to do full production projections for staffing and all those different scenarios. Anyway, not sure if I got that under 10 minutes or not, but thanks. We will be doing a follow-up relatively soon, and if anyone is interested, please reach out. I'm happy to do a custom demo. Have a great week, everyone.